Okay, so welcome to the students today's virtual classroom, and today we want to explain or do we want to discuss about the first war of independence, class 10, first chapter. And this is very important for you because this is a very easy chapter as well as your first chapter. And when you will give any exam, so the first chapter will be always there. So as well, not only in class 10, if you continue higher study in history, so you will see this chapter will come everywhere in your IAS examination as well as other administrative examinations, WBCS examination, everywhere. And this is a very important chapter. So let's start this chapter. The first war of independence, as you can see, I have written here, the first war of independence 1857. This revolt is also popularly known as the Revolt of 1857 or the Great Uprising of 1857. Before we will discuss about this, the causes, the backgrounds, the factors, whatever played an important role behind this uprising or this first war of independence, I want to give you just a little introduction. But the process of the British conquest in India and the consolidations of the British rule was accompanied by the resentments among the Indians. Because British started their rule in India in 1757 onwards. 1757 onwards. You know that in 1757 what happened? Battle of Plassey. Battle of Plassey. They defeat Sirajuddaulah. And after that in 1764 they defeated Mir Qasim in the Battle of Buxar, and after that they consolidated their power in Bengal. And then their way of political expansion, territorial expansion that started. And within 100 years, almost entire India came under their control. And the last annexation of British in India was Awadh. When? In 1856. So almost entire country came under their control in 1856. But within this 100 years was marked by the British conquest, their political rapid expansions of their territory, and the combined effects of British expansion policies, their economic exploitation, administrative changes, and adversely affected the all segments of the Indian society. All segments of the Indian society. And the ruling classes, those who were deposed from their powers, they became anti of the British. And the peasantry were also deprived from their land rights. And the artisans lost their livelihood. Middle class people, those who were earlier in higher post in administration, they were also excluded or expelled, particularly in northern India, and they were also annoyed because of their exclusion from the well-paid higher administrative jobs. So like priests and the other religious and the scholars, they also lost their livelihood. So all these grievances culminated together, and 1857 the burst up as a first war of independence. But there was also a different opinion, different views about the different scholars regarding the nature of this revolt. Regarding the nature of this revolt, some scholars view or opinion that this is the first war of independence. Again, some British historians, their view, this is just a sepoy mutiny. Why? What was their opinion? Their opinion, because the revolt started by the sepoy, and just merely it's a sepoy mutiny, nothing else. But another side, the Indian historians, their evidence or their argue was this is the first time when the revolt spread in widespread. That means not restricted within some region, some places, as well as the participation also wide scale. Different caste, different profession, different religion, people join in this revolt. Maybe the revolt started by the sepoy, but it was not limited within them. It's wide scale. Participations also wide. And entire North India involved in this revolt because Before 1857, many uprising, many revolts were took place, but all were localized in nature. All were localized in nature, scattered, because the revolt may be started by the some group of people, peasants, some were the farmers, some were the workers, some were the jamindars, some were the descendants of the rulers, etc. And they had their own selfish needs, and the revolt, uprising, whatever took place before 1857, all were localized as well as small in size, and there was no wide scale participation. So that is why British easily suppressed all those revolt or uprising. But this is the first time when wide scale participations and widespread. So due to that, Indian historians refer this revolt as the first war of India's independence. So now the causes. As you can see, I have written here the causes. The causes are actually divided into many categories, like political causes, socio-religious causes, economic causes, then military causes, and at last the immediate cause of the revolt of 1857. So first is the political causes. The political reasons which antagonized the Indian rulers were some of the important points, political reasons. Number one, the first I have written here, the policy of expansion. Then second, disrespect shown to Bahadur Shah Jafar or Bahadur Shah. Third, the treatment given to Nana Sahib. And fourth point is absentee sovereignty of the British rule. Absentee sovereignty of the British rule. So first we will discuss the policy of expansion. Policy of expansion. British policy of territorial expansion and the gradual annexations of the native Indian states was one of the major grievances of the Indian rulers. And since a Battle of Plassey, that is in 1757, East India Company territorial power increased rapidly, and British tried to expand their political power in India by four ways. Number one, by outright war. Number two, by subsidiary alliance. Number three, by doctrine of lapse. And number four, alleged misrule or misgovernance of subordinate state policy. So first we will discuss about the outright wars. To expand their territorial power in India and to safeguard their economic and the political interest, the British waged many wars against the native rulers. Battle of Buxar, 1764. After that they annexed Bengal. Then they fought against the Mysore. They fought how many wars against the Mysore? They fought 4 war against the Mysore. First 2 was fought by Hyder Ali. Then during Second Anglo-Mysore War, Hyder Ali was died in the battlefield due to heart attack. And then his son, the Tiger of Mysore, who? Tipu Sultan, continued, and he also defeated by the British, and ultimately Mysore was annexed by British 1799 after the 4th Anglo-Mysore War. After that, British also waged a war against the Maratha, and they fought 3 times against the Maratha. And after that, in 1818, they annexed Maratha. Then they looked towards the Punjab, and they fought twice against Punjab. Anglo-Sikh War. One is in 1845, another one in 1848. And ultimately, Punjab was annexed in 1849. Next is, so this is the outright war through which British annexed these native states. Next is, we will go to the subsidiary alliance. The subsidiary alliance was introduced by Lord Wellesley. What was this policy, subsidiary alliance? But this was done by subsidiary alliance was a policy introduced by British to bringing more and more Indian states without fighting a war against them. So it's just a friendship treaty with the native rulers. And if any Indian ruler accept this policy, this friendship treaty, they should follow some terms or conditions. What are the terms the native ruler should follow? Those who accepted. Number one, they have to maintain a British troops in their own cost. Number two, there will be a British officer or resident in his court. Number three, the native rulers were not allowed to appoint any Europeans without the permissions of the British. Number four, the native rulers were not allowed to sign any agreement treaty with any other European company without the permissions of the British. And number five, virtually, the native ruler lost their independence. So in return, what they will get from the British? In return, British will give them the protection in internal as well as external. And by using this policy, British annexed the territory subsidiary alliance first, accepted by Nizam of Hyderabad. Nizam of Hyderabad. Now next policy, under the policy of expansion that the British followed to expand their territory in India. That is the third point, doctrine of lapse. Many times you read in junior classes. Doctrine of lapse introduced by Lord Dalhousie. And what was this policy? According to doctrine of lapse, if any Indian ruler died without leaving a natural male heir, if any Indian ruler died without leaving a natural male heir, then the state would be passed into the hands of British. And according to this policy, British annexed many Indian territories like Jhansi, Nagpur, Satara, Sambalpur, Udaipur, Jayapur, etc. Next is the fourth policy, that is on the pretext of Allied misrule. But in 1856, Lord Dalhousie annexed Awadh to the company dominions on the pretext of Allied misrule, and he declared Awadh was being misgoverned and the British rule was needed to ensure the proper administration, and in this cause they annexed Awadh. Lord Dalhousie justified the annexation of Awadh on the pretext within quotations, the good of the governed. On the contrary, the people of Awadh had to face more hardship due to the annexation of Awadh. And it was actually kind of betrayal with Awadh, Why? Because since the beginning of the British rule in India, when British tried to expand their territories in India, Awadh always being loyal to the British. And they helped British to capture the other Indian territories. They helped British to capture the other territories in India, as well as in British army, 70%, actually 75,000 soldiers were from Awadh. And they can't imagine in their dream that one day their territories will come under or confiscated by the British. So that is why when Awadh was annexed by the British, Awadh people had to face a lot of hardship. Like number one, now they had to pay a higher land revenue and additional taxes. Number two, the resolutions of the Nawab, Awadh army and the administration threw the thousands of nobles and the officials from the jobs. Number three, the British confiscated the estates, talukdar and jamindars, and the talukdars and jamindars were actually become anti of the British. As well as 75,000 soldiers were from Awadh, were the worst affected. Then they lost their jobs. Now, this is the first point we discussed, the policy of expansion. Now we will go to the second point, disrespect shown to Bahadur Shah Jafar. But Bahadur Shah Jafar was a Mughal ruler and was under the protections of the company and received a pension from British. But the name of the Mughal king was removed from the coins minted by the British or the company. Then two announcements made by the British, and that actually hurt the religious sentiment as well as shown disrespect to Bahadur Shah Jafar. Number one, in 1849, Lord Dalhousie announced that the successors of Bahadur Shah Jafar were not allowed to stay the Red Fort as their palace. Now, they were required to shift to the place near Qutub Minar. Near Qutub Minar. Next is number two, second announcement by Lord Canning. In 1856, Lord Canning announced that after the death of Bahadur Shah Jafar, his successor would not be allowed to use any kinds of imperial titles with their name, and they would be known as just a princess. And the decisions of the British, this hurt the feeling of the Muslim. This is second point. Now third point is treatment given to Nana Sahib. Which is Nana Sahib was the adopted son of Bajirao II, and he was the last Peshwa. The British refused to grant pension to Nana Sahib that they paid earlier to Bajirao II, and that is Nana Sahib also forced to leave away from their family members and settle where Kanpur, and family was in Pune. Then this was widely resented in the Maratha region. Nana Sahib had inherited wealth from the former Peshwa that he utilized in sending emissaries to different parts of the country for generating awareness among the Indians about the British policies. And Nana Sahib traveled between the Delhi and Lucknow to gather support for the movements. Next is number 4, absentee sovereignty of the British rule. Absentee sovereignty means that India was being ruled by the British government from England. And that is at a distance of thousands of miles, and this was resented by the Indians. But earlier ruler, before the arrival of British, who ruled India? Sultanate ruler, Mughal rulers. How they ruled India? They settled India and ruled India. They settled here, they collected revenue from the Indians, and that revenue they spent for the welfare of the Indians. But here, the revenue they collected by the British, they completely sent where? In Britain. And Indian wealth being drained to Britain and not utilized for the welfare of the Indians. And this is called absentee sovereignty of the British rule. Now next is, so this is the political causes. Now next is the socio-religious causes of the revolt of 1857. Socio-religious causes. The apprehension, first is the socio-religious. When the British government attempted to interfere in the socio-religious life of the Indian peoples, and that also caused a wide-scale resentments among the Indian people. Now some of the points, like interference with the social customs. Number 2, apprehension about the modern innovations. Policy of racial discrimination. Number 4, corruption in administration. Number 5, operations of the poor. Number 6, law of property. Number 6, taxing in the religious places. So there are many socio-religious causes and which led the revolt of 1857. So first we will discuss about the interference with the social customs. But some of the social reforms introduced by the British in India were aimed to improve the conditions of the people. But however, while introducing such reforms, the feelings of the peoples were not taken into consideration. And the result was the reforms like abolitions of sati, then introductions of the widow remarriage, then women's educations, all this. The Indian people didn't welcome all this innovation or introductions. Next is number 2. Second point is apprehension about the modern innovations. The peoples were actually suspicious of the introduction of modern innovations like railway, telegraphs, and there was rumor that about the telegraph poles. Rumor that the telegraph poles were actually erected to hang them, those who will go against British. Not only that, the Orthodox Indians also noted that in the railway compartment, the higher caste and the lower caste were made to sit side by side. And this was a deliberate attempt by the British to harm their caste sentiments and the religious beliefs. Next is number 3, the policy of racial discrimination. The British officers were always rude and arrogant towards the Indians, and they believed that they were superior and Indians were inferior. And they also believed that Indians were born to be rule, not to born to be ruled, not to rule. And as well as in some restaurants, as well as in railway, there was some specific compartment for the British where Indians were not allowed, as well as in restaurants. Some restaurants they used some placards and were written, the dogs and Indians are not allowed. And this treatment hurt the Indian people and caused a resentment. Next is number 4, the corruption in administration. Corruption in administration. Which the police and the petty officials were actually become very much corrupt. Rich people got away with crime, but common people were actually looted and oppressed as well as tortured. Next is 5th point, taxing religious places. Religious sentiments of the Indians were hurt by the official policy of taxing the lands belongs to the temples or mosque, and this is the first time and that hurt the religious sentiments of the Indian people. Number 6, the law of property. Religious Disability Act of 1850 changed the Hindu law of property. Changed the Hindu law of property, and it enabled a convert from Hinduism to other religion to inherit the property of his father. If you convert your religion from Hindu to any other religion, then only you will inherit your father property, otherwise not. So all these socio-religious factors made the people furious about the British intentions and played an important role to create the way for revolt of 1857. Now next is third cause, that is economic causes of the revolt of 1857. Which is the most important reason for the popular discontents were the economic exploitation by the British. And British exploited Indians through various ways. Like first, one, exploitations of the economic resources, then drain of wealth, then decay of cottage industry and the handicrafts, and number 4, the economic decline of the peasantry, number 5, the growing unemployment. So these are the important points in economic factors. So first point, we will discuss the exploitations of the economic resources. Which agricultural India was made an economic colony to serve the interest of the British. India was an agricultural country. India's economy is based on agriculture. But the British, when they started to rule in India, they converted India a economic colony to serve the interest of the British. And India was forced to export the raw materials which are needed for British industries, like raw cotton, jute, silk, etc. And plantation products like indigo, tea, etc., as well as the food grains, which are in short supply in Britain. And India was made to accept the ready-made British goods either duty-free or minimum charges. But while Indian goods exported to Britain, they imposed a high duties, and the Indian handmade goods were unable to compete with the British machine-made goods, and that result, they ruined the Indian industry, deprived of the artisans of their incomes, and many people become unemployment. Next is number 2, drain of wealth. Till the Battle of Plassey in 1757, European traders used to bring gold into India to buy cotton and the silk. But however, after the conquest of Bengal, especially 1757 and the 1764, after that British got the right to got the Diwani rights, and they get the right to collect revenue from Bengal, Bihar and Odisha, and that revenue they spend to purchase the silk and the cotton from India and stop bringing gold from Britain. So thus began the process of plundering India's raw materials, resource and wealth by the Britain. And what is the definitions of the drain of wealth? Which is the transfer of wealth from India to England, for which India got no proportionate economic return. India got no proportionate economic return is called the drain of wealth. And drain of wealth actually took place through various ways, like salaries, incomes and the savings of the Englishmen, and the British expenditure in India, purchase of military goods, office establishments, as well as the interest on debits, etc. Next is the third point, economic decline of the peasantry. Economic decline of peasantry, the peasantries were the discontent with the official land revenue policy and consequent loss of their land right or their rights over the lands. And it was peasantry that bore the heavy burden of taxes to provide money for the trade of the company, for the cost of administration, as well as for the British expansion in India. But British did nothing for the peasants. They collected huge revenue from the Indians, from the peasants, but they didn't try to improve the conditions of the peasants. And sometimes the peasants, to pay the revenue to British, they took money from the money lenders. But if they are unable to return money to the money lenders are actually took away their lands. In this way, many peasants became landless. And the economic decline of the peasantry that affected the cultivations and led to many famines. Now next is the fourth point, the decay of the cottage industry. Decay of cottage industry. With the heavy duties on the Indian silk, cotton textile in Britain that destroyed the India's industries. On the other hand, British goods were actually imported to India without any duty charges or nominal duty charge. But by the middle of the 19th century, the export of cotton and silk goods drastically reduced from India. And the art of spinning, weaving, which for ages had given the employment to the thousands of artisans, and become extinct. So next is another one, the growing unemployments. But the traditional rulers had given the financial support to the scholars, preachers, artisans, craftsmen, etc. But the coming of the British rule that led the many native rulers were actually, or native territories came under the British control, and the people, those who depends on the native ruler for their livelihood, they lost their livelihood. In this way, many people lost their royal patronage. So these are the economic causes behind the revolt of 1857. I hope all of you understand or understood all these points. Now next is, we will go to the fourth cause, that is the military causes. Military causes of the revolt of 1857. But the several factors that contributed to the change in the attitudes of the Indian soldiers towards the British. And some of the important factors, like number one, ill treatment to the Indian soldiers, or ill treatment of the Indian soldiers. Next is number two, the General Service Enlistment Act. Number three, the larger proportions of the Indian in British Army. Larger proportions of the Indians in British Army. Number four, bleak prospects of promotions. Number five, deprivations of their allowances. Number six, very low wages or lower salary. So these are the important points. Now we will discuss one by one little bit. So first is ill treatment of the Indian soldiers. Which East India Company established the British Empire in India with the help of the Indian soldiers. But then also, despite the fact that Indian soldiers as efficient as their British counterpart, but they were poorly paid, ill-fed, and badly housed. As well as the Indian soldiers were not allowed to use any kinds of religious mark, or they were not allowed to keep their beard, they were not allowed to use the turban, etc. Next is number two, second point, General Service Enlistment Act. General Service Enlistment Act passed by the British in 1856, and according to this act, whenever British want, the Indian soldiers have to serve in their overseas territory. But the problem was, there was a taboo for the Brahmin to cross the sea. And there was a belief that if they cross sea, they may lose their caste. So that is why when British introduced this Act, General Service Enlistment Act, and forced Indian to serve their overseas territory, they opposed. And this also hurt the religious sentiments of or caste sentiments of the Indian people. Next, third point. The larger proportions of the Indian in British Army. The number of British troops in India was never very high, or very large. The British in the ratio always very low, and that number encouraged the Indian soldiers to take up arms against the British. Next is number 4, the bleak prospects of promotion. All higher position in the employments were actually reserved for the British. Irrespective of their performance. Even an Indian soldiers formerly occupying the higher position in the armies of native princes could not rise above the post or rank of Subedar. Their maximum high rank is Subedar. And the future of the Indian soldiers were actually bleak, without any chances of promotion. Next is deprivations of the allowances. Deprivations of their allowances, which is the extension of the British dominion in India that adversely affected the service conditions of the sepoy. Service conditions of the sepoy. Why? Because earlier British used to pay extra allowances those who serve away from their houses. But that extra allowance was called Vatta. Now British stopped that extra allowances, and that is why some soldiers, Indian soldiers, those who serve away from their houses, they faced acute economic problems. Next is the lower salary. The wages of the Indian soldiers were actually inadequate to support their family. On the other hand, British soldiers received more than 8 times the salary of an Indian soldiers. So these are the economic factors which played, military factors which played an important role behind the revolt of 1857. Now we will come to the final cause of the revolt of 1857. That is also considered as the immediate cause of the revolt of 1857. In 1856, British authority decided to replace their old-fashioned musket that called brown bees by the new Enfield rifle. But the problem is, to use that rifle, the soldiers have to fill the rifle with a cartridge, and the rumor spread that the cartridge had a greased cover, and the cover was made by mixture of a fat of cow and pig. And as you know, the Hindus worshipped cow and Muslim hated pigs, so both refused to accept the Enfield rifle, and that triggered the First War of Independence. When the Indian soldiers refused to use the rifle, the British officers forced them, they have to use, and that is why in some regiments, some unwanted things were took place. That is why some soldiers shoot some officers, and that is why the revolt started. And the revolt on February 26, 1857, the revolt actually started. Now next, beginning of the uprising, not in your syllabus, events also not in your syllabus. So now we will go to the consequences of the First War. I hope don't have any problem up to this immediate causes. Now next we will discuss the consequences of the First War of Independence. But even though the uprising of 1857 was suppressed, but it shook the British in India to its very foundations. And it brought about a far-reaching effect on the India's socio-political life. First, we will see the end of company's rule. The most significant result of the 1857 was the East India Company. That rule came to an end. Now India will be ruled directly by the British Crown. And this was done by the Government of India Act of 1858. Now we will see what were the changes, what are the changes took place according to Government of India Act 1858. So number one, it transferred the power from East India Company to British Crown. Number two, the company earlier Board of Control look after the Indian affairs. Now India's affairs will look after by a Secretary of States headed by a council. Earlier, India was looked after by a board of control, the court of director, and that abolished now. Now, India will be looked after by a secretary of states that headed by a council. Number three, the actual governance was to be carried on as before by the Governor General. Now, the Governor General post modified and he became the Viceroy. He was the representative of British Crown. Next is number four. Appointments of the civil service were be made open competitions under rules made by the Secretary of State. So these are the administrative changes brought by British according to the Government of India Act 1858. Now next is the Queen Proclamation. Very, very important. Maybe question come in exam. Mention the promise made by Queen Victoria in her proclamation. So the Queen Proclamations incorporating the transfer of the governance from East India Company to the British Crown and made it public at Allahabad when 1st November 1858. What were the promise made by Queen Victoria in her proclamation? Number one, follow a policy of non-intervention in social and the religious matters of the Indians. Number two, treat all subjects, Indians and Europeans, equally. Number three, grant a general pardon to all those who had taken part in the revolt of 1857 except those who were found guilty of murder of the British subjects. Number four, British will try its level best for the advancements of industry in India. Number five, promote the public utility, works of public utility in India. So these are the promises made by Queen Victoria. Next is third consequence. First points we discuss end of company's rule. Second is Queen Victoria's proclamations. Third is the end of Mughal and the Peshwa. So we know that in the revolt of 1857, Bahadur Shah Zafar was the leader of the revolt because the rebellions considered him as the leader of the revolt of 1857 and they wanted to establish the Mughal Empire, re-establish the Mughal Empire. So, when the revolt suppressed, the Bahadur Shah Zafar was actually exiled to Yangon and that was the end of Mughal dynasty. Next is the Nana Sahib, the last Peshwa, had taken an active part in the revolt of 1857. Unfortunately, he was defeated in the battle and then he fled from the battlefield and went to Nepal and that was considered the end of Peshwa rule. Next is the relaxation with the princely state. Fourth point, fourth consequence. So, relations with the relations as well as the relaxation given to the princely states. We know that many princely states didn't join the revolt of 1857. Instead of that, they supported the British to suppress the revolts. So that is why after the revolts over, British reward them with some concession, relaxation. Now, British will accept their adapted succession. Next is number 5, racial antagonism. Another one consequence. British believed in their racial superiority and they thought some social distance should be maintained to preserve their authority over the Indians. So that is where railway compartment, park, hotels, clubs, etc. reserved for European only were visible manifestations of the racialism. And next is very, very important points. The changes in the army. What were the changes brought by British after the revolt of 1857? So first point, the strength of European troops in India were increased. Strength of European troops in India was increased and the ratio of Europeans, especially 2.5 were Madras and Bombay and Bengal 1:2. The ratio became 1:2 in Bengal and 2:5 in Bombay and Madras. Next is number 2. European troops were kept in key geographical position. Number three, discrimination on the basis of caste, religion was practiced in the recruitment to the army. Number four, newspaper, journals, and the national journals and as well as publications, nationalist publications were prevented from reaching to the soldiers. Why? To keep the soldiers separated from the life of the rest of the population. Again, I'm telling the last points. Newspapers, journals, nationalist publications were actually kept away from the soldiers to keep themselves away from the rest of the life of the population. So these are the economic army changes brought by the British. Next is the economic exploitation. So the uprising of 1857 ended the era of territorial expansion and it ushered in the era of economic exploitations. How? Let's see. First point is India was turned into a typical colonial economy, only exporting raw material and importing British finished goods. Number 2, the salary and the allowances of the Secretary of States, members of the India councils, and the civil servants, military officers were actually a large drain of country's resources. And number 3, peasants were improvised under the British rule. Number 4, rural artisans, industries such as the handicrafts, spinning and weaving were actually collapsed. So these are the economic changes that brought after 1857, after the revolts. So that's it. Thank you, students. I hope all of you understand. And the questions which are important that I will give you,